This is a video of our trip to Colorado, where we went to New Mexico, the Balloon Festival, Carlsbad Caverns, White Sands, and the Sand Dunes National Park. All right. So we started out. These were the aspens that we've seen in southern Colorado. You want to say something?
You're doing a great job. They were at the end of the peak of the colors.
And this was a trip that we had talked about going on. My mom and dad had went there when they were going South Arizona, and Denny and Marlene Ballinger had also went the year before, 2 years before, and gave us some pointers about going. We had planned to go the year before, and Mom passed away when we were planning to go. So here you can see some of the aspens and a little bit of the yellows, but you can see that some of the trees, the leaves have already fallen, so it was kind of past the peak. It's along a river that we stopped at, and you can see the contrasting yellow and green.
Here's Traveling with Lenny.
Everybody likes the Huskers. Listen to this. Huskers!
Went down to make sure we got to see the balloons, which was a good idea and then we went back and explored a little bit around Taos and things like that. But the last day was actually canceled because of wind. So you want to make sure that you get there early in the week as well. This just shows some of you're actually right down on the field where the balloons are being blown up in the trucks, and you can walk around pretty freely to see the balloons as they're going. Just all different shapes of balloons that you can see.
One of the days was designated as a shape day.
And where they had the different shapes. And here's some of my favorites, of course, Yoda and Darth Vader. See, when they kind of all went up, they all... Very old area with lots of old, this was the Taos town, and I think it's one of the older continual living villages in the United States. So you can see some of the buildings, and you could go through and look at the different buildings that were there. This was where the kind of huts that they reconstructed where they baked their bread and would put it inside. This was something Denny and Merlina talked about at Taos. It's called the Enchanted Circle. It took us a little bit to find this brochure, but it kind of goes around Taos, and it was kind of fun to go around. It would have been a little better earlier in October when the trees were brighter, but still was kind of a fun half-day drive going around.
And the chili peppers hung in the villages.
This was a petroglyph area that we went to. This was by Albuquerque, where you could see the petroglyphs that were on the area behind us. We did get to see a rainbow. We're always looking for rainbows. So this was one of the days when we came back down towards the end of the next week when there was a rainbow. So you can see the full rainbow. This is just very quickly is what it looks like when the balloons blow up. So they have people there. You can see them unrolling the balloon. They unrolled the balloon and get it all spread out, and then they begin to blow it up with the big fans. This was one of the bigger ones. It didn't actually go up. This was during a night glow. So you can see them blowing the heated air into it to blow it up. see a little bit how big it is. They didn't actually launch these, but what happens is they blow them up. Here you can see the glow. It's called.
How dangerous it is with all the ropes when it gets dark. You get choked out, sweetie. With the ropes hanging down. Hey, where are you at?
Well, those all go up.
About 6-year-old daughter that were inside kind of getting things arranged before we took off. The thing held, what, about 10 people? Here you can see them blowing the balloon up. We took off from a parking lot. Here we're up in the air overlooking, you'll see a little bit later, some of the balloons off in the distance. We were about a mile away, depending on the wind, from where the main group was taking off that morning. One thing we'd probably do different if we had it to do over again is this was a shorter ride, and it wasn't that neat being close to the balloon glow. So we probably would have arranged to maybe do a balloon ride from one of the other places at a different time. Just doing it during the balloon festival, and to take off from the park was really expensive, a lot more expensive to do than these. See, we went up, there's about 6 or 7 balloons that went up. You can see in the distance the balloons.
Apparently they had a balloon get away from them. Apparently in the evening. Oh yeah? Yeah.
This is what it looked like on another balloon that was right beside us. What do they call it when they put them together?
Kissing.
And so we got close enough. The other balloon actually bumped up against ours. You can see the area and all the balloons that are going. This was our landing, so you never know where you're going to land. So they had actually we landed, and then they kept the balloon up, and then they had another group that went in the balloon and took off from this spot. So it was kind of fun to land. In the video, you could hear was as we went over the areas. I imagine the people of Albuquerque are used to this, but you could hear the dogs barking as you went over the neighborhoods. We did go to a Husker game, and so this was the Husker game that we went to while we were there.
And watched it on TV.
Oh, yeah, watched it on TV.
Didn't go to a game.
And to show what a small world it is, Bob Vogt's ex-wife was there that we visited with, and another couple from Omaha area that were there. After the balloon festival, we went further south in New Mexico, and our first stop was White Sands National Monument and Park. And so you see some pictures. This is actually not made of sand, it's made of gypsum. And so it doesn't get hot in the summer, although when we were there in the fall, you didn't have to worry about that. But you can kind of see. This was funny, you can see, we tried to do a selfie, and it was hard to tell if you were what you were taking a picture of. And this one was actually going to be a picture going the other direction, but I got myself.
And this one shows the ripples made by the wind. And Lenny's footprint without a big toe.
In the distance, you can see the mountains.
And some trail of a lizard or beetle, or not for sure what it was.
This was one of the plants that's there, and the plants kind of hold the sand in place. So you see these every once in a while, that the sand is continually shifting depending on the wind and moving around. But these areas are ones that where the sand stays around the roots.
And the yucca plant, you can see where it was up that high at one time. The sand where it was. This
was our sunset one night, the night we were out there.
and our evening at a winery, and it was also pistachio trees, and so I had pistachio wine.
We went to Carlsbad Cavern. The funny thing was they asked if you've been here before, and I had been to Carlsbad Cavern when I was probably 10, 12 years old with my folks and could remember the bats coming out. This is the kind of walkway down, and you can see the cavern where the bats come out, but the bats are there only in the summer. But the cave was, they mined bat dung out of it in the early 1900s, where it was how it was kind of originally found and explored. So this is a trail, and we walked down into the cavern from this way. You can also take an elevator down, but we decided to walk down. And then the next one, you can see this is from down below looking up. And then there was lots of stalactites and stalagmites and all kinds of neat formations and places where you could go. One thing that we didn't do is a spelunking tour where you do kind of the lanterns and go down in. We decided not to do that. Here you can see some mountain goats, which Charlotte spotted by the entrance to Carlsbad Park. And again, they have a lot of light.
Oh, did you see him go?
Actually, I got that video going right there. Let's try and get him maybe some of their.
There, we did do a guided tour that kind of took us around and talked about the formations and where they're coming from and those types of things. But it was really
And also had us sit down, and they turned off the lights for a little bit so we could see how dark it was.
This was where I wanted to go. This was Roswell, which is famous for supposedly having space landings. But fortunately for us, it worked out that we got there late in the day and only had a couple hours to spend because that was plenty. It was very much hyped up, but not a lot to see. And I don't think even a very well done museum, but it was kind of fun to read some of the history about the aliens and supposedly landing there and what actually happened. Then we actually went back up to southern Colorado to Great Sand Dunes. This is actually sand here that they have, and it's a great big sand dune that's located in southern Colorado. This is kind of overlooking, you can see the sand dunes, and they actually shift in the wind, and kind of in the spring when the ice melts and snow melts and kind of goes down, and then the winds blow it back up into the piles. But they do have like sleds and saucers and stuff you can go down the hill with, but it looked like snowdrifts only made out of sand. Some hiking along the sand dunes. You can kind of see the extent of the sand. This was a hike up to a falls, which was a little deceiving because you actually couldn't get up to the falls, but it was right along the road going up to the Sand Dunes Park. You can kind of see the sand dunes there in the distance.
And our rock collection from this trip.
We always pick up some rocks and bring them back as we're going along in our car. When we're in the plane, we don't do that, but you can see a little of the gypsum that we got from White Sands Beach, and some of the other rocks that we picked up along the road and brought back and put them in our front of our house. This was a little funny. I'll thank Matt at work for this, but when we said we were going down to the balloon festival, he said, well, he didn't have to go down. He just had to look out the window when he was at York working. And he sent this picture, and I thought it was appropriate because the Arby's does look almost a little bit like a Darth Vader hat that was there.